I would describe myself as a student of human differences, of individual differences, um, in relation to what makes us each creative and gives us creative potential. I have just always found it so incredible that we all come out with this very distinct essence that couldn't possibly be crafted or changed, that is just so unique to who we are, and how, we go through these journeys on life that is constantly trying to shift that essence or take the edge off of the essence, or manipulate or add or extract or change. And at the end of the day, the closer we get to understanding what that as researchers would call like true or core self is, the more creative we can be. And so that has been like a thread my whole life that I've always found interesting.
Welcome to the 40 Portal. I'm Catherine Zach, and today's conversation is exceptional. My guest is Jessica Carson, a social scientist, a creativity researcher, and an author who started her career scanning brains at the NIH and ended up writing the book on the psychology of entrepreneurs. She's now a PhD candidate studying something that I think we're all thinking about right now. What makes creativity authentically human? And what happens when AI enters the room? Jess and I go back to DC, Washington, D.C. in the early 2010s, which was not quite as cool as like 1968 Haight-Ashbury or 1920s Paris, although Jess thinks it might have been. But it was such a palpable time of big worlds colliding. You had the kind of startup culture, hustle culture, corporate culture colliding with a really poignant, deep, skillful, interesting, knowledgeable, and wise meditation and yoga scene going on in the background, with just like an energy and an effervescence that only the Obama years in Washington, D.C. could bring us. And that is where we met when we were both in our 20s. And now here we are 15 years later talking about women and power, about the jobs and the opportunities that fell apart and the doors that only opened because they did fall apart, about feeling like an old soul your whole life and finally understanding why that might have been a gift the whole time. What I love about circling back to Jess after all these years and how we continue to dance in each other's orbits is that I think both of us have had a career path that has been anything but linear. And I know that so many women over 40 or approaching 40 have found themselves in similar experiences of their own. And today's conversation is such an example of why that's not a setback, why that's not a downfall, why that's not a limitation, but that the circular paths that we take that keep bringing us back to our core self and who we are and what we came here to be are actually perhaps the more nuanced, interesting, and meaningful paths that one could take in a life. I don't know. You'll have to see for yourself. I found it incredibly encouraging. Okay, let's dive into the episode. So when we met, it was like a moment in time. It wasn't as cool as like 1968 Haight-Ashbury or like 1980 Lower East Side. Like it wasn't that cool, but it was cool. It was the first, I think, end of first Obama term / like lead up to 2012 election, like winning that election, going into second Obama term. It was Washington, D.C. We were at this intersection of like hustle culture, right? Like I'm working at the law firm. You're in like startup life. There's like startup incubators happening. We're hanging out with people there. The like WeWork culture is prime. Sweetgreen was not yet like the Sweetgreen that it has become. Like all of these companies
The
are like big.
music
We were
was
all
on
bougie.
point. The music was so good.
What was your favorite? Give me a song from this
I
era.
just
Give
think
me
was
just one
going
song.
back to like taking classes with Sam and like the alt J songs he was really into at that moment in time.
And I will also say that like my musical taste, I've come back online, but like it kind of stagnated there for a while where like I'm still like playing songs from 2013 for a very long time. So it's like this intersection of like the Obama DCers, this weird burgeoning startup hustle culture, and then amazing yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
And those are the rooms that we hung out in together. And we were in like in our 20s. And like that to me is like a moment in time, even if it's not the coolest. It was pretty cool.
It was so cool. Oh, that was just, I like had my little bike with a basket and I was just like zooming around DC, like listening to like Blind Pilot and go to Flow. And actually, when I started with Flow, where we did yoga together, I was at the NIH doing neuroscience research and I would come back on the subway from Bethesda every night. And every single night I was in that studio doing my practice. And there were so many, oh my gosh, like all of the incredible people who were like, it kind of feels a little bit like a slightly less glamorous version of like Paris in the 20s, where it was like everyone was just kind of like hanging out but didn't really know who they were yet, or like we didn't know who they were yet. But then they like really all became people, or like, you know what I mean, in the sense of like they became people that the world knew.
Totally. Oh my God. Paris in the 1920s. That's it. That's what it was. That's what it was. It was DC in the early 2010s.
Oh, it was such a moment in time. I loved it.
But I don't remember actually meeting you. I have a pretty good memory for this. Like I don't remember our first conversation or the first time I saw you, but I just remember you and I traveling in the same circles. And also, I remember you still are younger than I am, but at that time, like the gap felt wider. And in my head, I still feel like you're 24. I know you're not, and I don't want you to tell us how old you are yet. But it is funny because that is like, it's interesting how the difference in how old we are changes as we get older.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember the first time I met you, but I remember the first time I kind of like was incepted with the idea of you, because one of the people who was in this like sort of this moment in time was our mutual friend Justin McLeod, who started Hinge, the dating app. But it wasn't like no one knew about it back then. And so it was just this like kind of app that was like constantly sort of on the verge of maybe not being an app anymore. And I remember him telling me like, I think he had gone on like a retreat with you and he was telling me about you. And he's like, oh yeah, she's this like incredible lawyer and she's so smart and she's like all these things. And I was like, I remember feeling intimidated because you're so beautiful and so smart and so successful and like so good at the yoga. And I was like, oh, she's so cool.
That's hilarious. I love that. Yes. I mean, I remember Justin like putting the app on my phone and I was like, okay, yeah, let's beta test this thing. It's so funny. And I remember you hanging like you were with, we were all walking in those circles together. And that's such a funny and sweet reflection because sometimes that happens with women, right? When we see each other and we're like, what do you think that is? Do you have a thought
When
about
especially
that?
because you were a few years older and I was so baby at the time, and so I
And I
was
was
just,
so mature. I was like 27 or 28
oh
or
yeah,
something.
you were like the cool babysitter age, and I, and I was like, I want to be like the cool babysitter.
Oh my gosh.
So
It's so
funny.
interesting. So is that something that you feel like also happens? I mean, that can be a timeless way of interacting with other women. Like that meaning that can happen at any age. But I don't know. Do you have more thoughts about that?
It's really interesting. I do feel like I've always been slightly more intimidated by slash in awe of powerful and smart and capable women than powerful, smart, and capable men, which is sort of an interesting thing. Um, but I do think that fades with time. I was just like at that age where I was so like entering the world for the first time. I had also spent my like, remember, I was working in like the depths of a lab scanning brains. I was not like peak cool or peak socialized. So I was really kind of like entering the social world for the first time. And so I do think that fades with age, but I think I've just always found it so much more compelling and exciting and also a little scary to meet a woman in her power than a man in his. And I'm not entirely sure why that is.
I have some thoughts. Number one, I also felt, I remember like coming online with like the consciousness of who you are and what you bring to the experience. And I remember actually being in awe of like your relative youth to me and being like, oh, she gets to make these choices that I've already made. And that is an interesting thing too. So I think that can go both ways. I think it can go like omnidirectionally, but I've always been enamored with women. I'm always like, whoa. And right. And for me, like I remember the older women in the yoga rooms, and by older, I mean like they were like 33, 34. And then like being a student of really powerful female teachers who that was such a formative experience for me, like standing in the room with like Jess Lazar at the top and like receiving such a transmission and being like slightly terrified, but also just enamored by that like energy of power and clarity and embodiment. And I was also like, oh, I hope I can tap into that one day
Yeah.
myself too.
But it's also in part an illusion because, um, I think what I have come to find like cool and impressive about a person has changed a lot over time. And I think when I was in my younger 20s, the idea of having a really impressive job was very striking to me. And so as you say, having your job in big law and everything was that. But you also don't know the reality of the person in that. And again, as you shared many times on this podcast and in your writings, how that was not as fulfilling and not as cool and not as meaningful as it might have seemed like superficially. And then I also had to go through those um, reckonings of like finding myself in a position that I thought was where I wanted to go, and other people found so impressive, and then being like, I don't like it here.
I know you've had that pathway too, and I want to dive into that over the course of our conversation today. But also, let's just clue the people in as to who you are. This woman who hung out with me in the proverbial 1920s Paris, but make it 2010s of DC. Will you tell us what your name is and your pronouns, but like go deeper? Is there a story about your name? Is there some way that it maps onto how you feel in your own identity or not? Tell us who you are.
Well, my name is Jessica, she, her. And as far as I know, my mom chose the name Jessica because she liked the Allman Brothers song, Jessica. And I think that's sort of like as far as the sort of meaning or symbolism goes. And it is kind of funny. I have a little bit of like a conflicting relationship with my name because so much of my work and research that I do now is centered on human uniqueness and individuality and the ways that we all deviate as individuals and why that translates so much into what we are uniquely here to do and create. And at the same time, Jessica is such a like overused and mainstream name to the point that it's like a meme how like sort of ordinary the name Jessica is. But actually I don't really, so I'm aware of that, but I've always liked it. Like I wouldn't pick it for myself, but I'm okay with it.
That's great. I actually love that. That feels like perfect irony or something, the creative
Yeah.
tension between your work and your name.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's
I
like,
like
oh,
that.
what is like a white girl millennial name? Jessica.
Jessica.
Like
Right,
that's
right.
so typical and expected.
So this brings us into my next question, which is, how would you introduce yourself first if job titles, accomplishments, and labels and like your resume weren't part of your answer, but we can pepper
Mm.
those in later?
Hmm. Um, I would describe myself as a student of human differences, of individual differences, um, in relation to what makes us each creative and gives us creative potential. I've just always found it so incredible that we all come out with this very distinct essence that couldn't possibly be be crafted or changed, that is just so unique to who we are and how, we go through these journeys on life, that is constantly trying to shift that essence or take the edge off of the essence or manipulate or add or extract or change. And at the end of the day, the closer we get to understanding what that as researchers would call like true or core self is, the more creative we can be. And so that has been like a thread my whole life that I've always found interesting, which then happily translates into also the work that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I was a little late to our podcast recording, because I do not have like a great bookshelf system in my current home and office. I'm working on it. So a lot of my books are upstairs in the attic in boxes. And so I'm like, it's like 95 degrees here today. I'm in the attic, like pulling out these boxes to try to find your book, which you published right at the beginning or right before the
Oh, I will
pandemic.
tell you what, don't try to publish a book in April 2020.
Um,
It was, yeah,
You and Glennon Doyle.
yeah. Yes, I would love to be lumped in with her. Me and Glennon Doyle, the same
Just Glennon Doyle.
law of, I mean, it was just like everyone thing was on fire. The world was melting down. And I'm like, here's my book. Here's my book. Please buy it.
Mhm.
Please prioritize this among all of the other things that are melting down in your life. Please buy my book on the psychology of entrepreneurs. And really, it was on the psychology of entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs use sort of loosely in the sense that anyone who is entrepreneurial has an entrepreneurial spirit. So the book was which is called Wired This Way. And it was exploring. Well, actually, can I give a little bit of context as to
Yes.
sort of how we got to the book? So,
Yeah.
I mentioned that I was like working in the neuroscience lab at the NIH. Found myself not very happy in a lonely, cold lab scanning brains all day. So I ejected and entered the DC world of startups and venture capital and did that for a few years. And so in working with entrepreneur, became my job to just like interact with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial people all day long. And having the background in psychology and neuroscience, I started to detect some patterns in their individuality and their differences. And at the time, again, remember, this was like, now we talk about entrepreneur mental health and psychology constantly. It's like, in mainstream news. But at the time, it wasn't. And so I started recognizing, wow, there seems to be a lot of certain types of mental health issues, preponderance of certain intense or combustive personality traits, like impulsivity or novelty seeking or sensation seeking or aggression or hyper, passion bordering on martyrdom. All of these, traits that were both extremely light, extremely productive, extremely creative and ambitious, but also had a shadow side. So as I started doing more research on that, I did find that there was a small and growing body of research into the psychology of entrepreneurs, finding that they do disproportionately struggle with addiction, depression, ADHD, bipolar. They have certain personality characteristics that can be troublesome. They view and navigate the world in idiosyncratic ways that can be beautiful, also troublesome. So wrote a book really on the light and the dark of the entrepreneurial spirit, and helping to make the argument as to why the things that we are so eager to want to criticize about entrepreneurs or see as only problematic are tied to their equal and opposite sort of creative potential. And we can use, we can pick ADHD as an example. So research has found that entrepreneurs struggle with ADHD significantly more than non-entrepreneurs. And while it can be, lead to distraction and things like that, it is also associated with more curiosity, more energy, more sociability, more novel pattern connecting, and things that are actually adaptive advantages in the entrepreneurial context. So that being one example, you can extrapolate that across the personality to understand, wow, there actually is a reason why these individuals sort of feel different. And it's because those differences actually serve them in the entrepreneurial context.
Wow, so much there. I am curious, and I love that you are like research based, like you're out in the world, like doing this research, and that's how you navigate your work. So anecdotally, I feel like I keep encountering women in their 40s who are like creative entrepreneurial spirits who are getting later in life ADHD diagnoses, and I wonder if you've like looked at any of that research.
Yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating. So much of the creative and entrepreneurial psyche has to do with the dopaminergic system. So dopamine being the neurotransmitter that modulates reward and risk and moving towards people and experiencing and experiences and things that feel new and sensational and exciting and titillating. And that's actually why entrepreneurs are also more likely to struggle with addiction, because the same tendencies that are driving the addiction, that are underpinning the addiction, are also underpinning a desire to seek out newness, to tolerate ambiguity, to pursue risky situations that other people would find far too anxiety inducing. So in a sense, and this is not to condone it or to say you shouldn't treat it, but it is interesting to understand how that sort of predisposition can be connected to potential and not only deficit.
I love that. Okay, now here's my real question. How old were you when the book came out?
I was working on the book for a couple of years because it took a lot of different forms. I probably wrote like 5 versions of the book before I got to the final one. The first few ones were more creative and a little more flowery, and then they got increasingly sort of research-based as I had a framework that I understood and was working with, and then the final version ended up being extremely heavy in the research. But I was, when it came out 2020, I was 29, 30,
Wow.
something like that. Yeah.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
And like, this is what I was thinking about as I was prepping for our convo today. Like, you did the years of research, you did the work, you sat with it, you talked to people, you read the studies, all the things. And you put this body of work out into the world at like kind of like a savant type age, like 29, 30. Like, that's so young. And
there's also drawbacks to doing it that way, though. But continue.
Tell me. No, you tell me. Pause there. Tell me.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this, like, but Brene Brown has this thing where she has some of the most viewed TED Talks of all times, and she will say like she can never go back and watch the TED Talks because she just like cringes. And I was listening to an interview with like Leonardo DiCaprio, and he's like, I can't watch my movies, like, ew, gross. And I'm not trying to compare myself to them. What I am saying is I do think that there's this kind of like retrospective ick cringe factor where like and I even get this like watching reels I posted last week where I'm like in the moment, I'm like, this is the thing. Oh my God. Like I am speaking my truth. This is fundamental, timeless knowledge. And then in a week, I'm like, I said that weird. Or like, that's, that's not, it sounded different in my head. You know what I mean? And so I don't know if it's a function of age or it's just a function of time passing. I would say that if I was writing the book today, there are certain things I would have done differently. Um, not in the fundamental premise, more so in like the way I told stories. I think in my 20s, I was a little more like loosey goosey with like sharing and opening up everything to everyone. And as I've gotten older, and I wouldn't say I've become like less vulnerable. I think I've just become more discerning. And I do think there's we do tend to. There are corners of the internet where vulnerability has become like a kind of kink, where it's like if I can just reveal everything sort of impulsively, that's doing myself and the world a good. And I've learned that I don't believe that to be true. But yeah, I do think the book would look a little different if I was publishing it today. That said, I also think there's just this kind of ism where a lot of times creators have a hard time digesting work that they even thought was brilliant in the moment that they created it.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Okay, my favorite fact about Brene Brown, my non-existent fact checker will have to fact check this for us. Is that I feel like she self-published her first book at like age 42 and like sold it out of the back of her car. And then, yeah, and then the TED Talk came like very soon after that, like the one that kind of launched her into what we know now. And so she has always been a bastion of like, oh, you just kind of get started in your 40s, which for some reason always felt like it was coming for me. I don't know. I always had this catalog of like women who began or who got known for the things that they did later in life. But I think it's fascinating because our culture really like glamorizes youth in that way. And like coming back to like our Paris in the 1920s, but make it, DC in the early 2010s. So many of those startup found all those people were so
Oh yeah.
young
But that was
building.
also like a collective fetish at the time. Like
Yeah.
people being almost inappropriately young for the success they were having. Because it was all, do you
Right.
remember? It was all about like the 30 under 30,
30
the
under 30.
25 under 25. That was such a thing in the zeitgeist. It was almost like that generation's being skinny or something. It was like to be a young savant.
Yes, you're
Yeah.
so right. It was so fetishized. But I guess my question about this, like having done all that, like um research-based work and put this book out into the world at 29 or 30, and now having lived 6 more years of experience into now, well, we'll do the math in a moment on your age, like what I'm always curious about like lived experience as a portal for understanding. And I just wonder if you've reflected back on that body of research or that book and like what you've learned in the last 6 years of being in your own creation of your career and your professional life and your own entrepreneurial spirit. Like, I don't know. Anything
Yeah.
there?
Oh no, I mean, of course. One thing I would say, so I've written, I'd say, I mean, 4 books since I wrote Wired This Way that I have not published. So I think there's also something to you where you're like, this is a great idea. And then, there is something, research shows that like the earlier on you are in your creative career, the more of a novice you are, the more you are convinced actually in the novelty and uniqueness of your work because you have not actually been exposed to as much to realize that what you're creating is actually in some way a little bit derivative. And I'm not trying to say my book was derivative, but I do think that like with age I have become more discerning about um what I share when I share it. But I also think that now is a really interesting time. I do. So, it's funny when I wrote Wired This Way, like, there are a couple examples of like truly bad entrepreneur, naughty entrepreneurs. You had the like Elizabeth Holmes, and you had the Travis Kalanick of Uber acting out, and you had these different sort of characters. But now with AI, I feel like in this AI landscape, I would have to write the book a little bit differently to account for not only some of the mental health challenges, not only some of the personality challenges, but also more of the sort of dark triad challenges, which is a little bit harder to condone. Because I think in this world where we're seeing, especially a lot of the AI CEOs saying really terrifying, borderline sociopathic, often extremely narcissistic, very kind of Machiavellian coded things, I think it would be trickier to write a book like that at this moment, because it would be like, okay, so you're saying that like Sam Altman or Elon Musk, you're like condoning their quirkiness. And in a way the work is, and in a way the work also isn't, because there is a reason, there's part of their wiring that does allow them to do what they do. And so there is goodness inherent in those differences. But I think we're just seeing more entrepreneurial founders who are inflicting harm at scale in a way that I think would need to be addressed in a more like modern, like updated version of the book.
That's so good. It's also just giving me pause to be like, that is now, I mean, it's 6 years ago, but let's say you started this research 10 years ago, started working 15 years ago, and now that's a long enough arc to look back and kind of peer behind you and see how some of these things and people and companies and theories have shaken out. And
Yeah, and how
even
they
the
age, because it's also public perception, right? Like when I was writing the book, as we've noted, entrepreneurship was so sexy. Everyone wanted to start a startup. Everyone wanted to like know an entrepreneur, date an entrepreneur. Like it was just so sexy in that moment. And now there's just been such a shadow cast. I think my perception is like entrepreneurship is in many ways less glamorized than it has been, because we've kind of gotten this like supervillain cast of characters that have sort of overshadowed the space.
Okay, we've been doing age math kind of this whole time, but will you tell us how old you are and how old do you feel?
I'm 35. I'm turning 36 in November. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is probably the single biggest common thread of like people you have on this podcast. But like my mom has always commented, she's like, you're the 70-year-old, 7-year-old. Like stop taking things so seriously. Stop, like just be a kid. And it's just never really been my nature to want to be younger than I am or to act younger than I am. And I've always felt older than I am. So I don't know. I in my soul, I'm a crone.
That tracks. That totally tracks. That's so interesting because now I almost feel like I'm Benjamin Buttoning a little bit, and I want to figure out like the female version of that, because I'm pretty sure that like the oldest I ever felt was like right before I quit Big Law, which would have put me at like 26, 27, 28. There was such a seriousness to that space that did not leave a ton of room for levity. And I think too, I was kind of like, and I feel like a lot of us are starting to unpack these stories of like how we became the way we, like what was us, right? What was our wiring this way? And also like how were we shaped into these like really responsible, high achieving, I mean, and I feel like I've been taking off that, I've been shedding that skin for the last 12 or 13 years. And yeah, in that way, I almost feel like there's a reversal there.
And has there been anything in your life that you think has contributed to being able to move into that youngening process more? Because I have a reflection on that.
I want to hear your reflection. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, before we hopped on the call, we were saying, yeah, I'm married now. 'Cause I got married in December. And it's really funny because I think this pattern was very like recognizable and well known to everyone who knew me up until I met my husband. But like I was always dating these very smart, very kind of like a little melancholic, a little brooding, a little philosophical, a little like, in a dark room drinking whiskey, like that was sort of my like archetype of the person I dated. And those relationships were always like very enamoring to me. And I was always very intrigued by that because it was very much like a reflection of it in many ways, like the person that I am. And so there was that like shared ground of like meeting that person who's can talk about philosophy and psychology and existentialism. And I found that very attractive and appealing. And it's interesting because I think um, no one in my family saw my husband coming in terms of like, he's such like a light and such a like, I mean, he's brilliant. So he has that in common with the rest of them, but he's not, there's nothing heavy. There's nothing, he's so sprightly. He's always laughing. He is so a can do person, a don't let yourself get dragged down by life person. And it's interesting to your point. I don't think that I was ever, I do think that the essence that is me is that like philosophical, psychological person. But I do think that there's also a playfulness and a sprightliness in there that wasn't always being drawn out by the people I was choosing or the environments I was choosing. And so being with my partner, he's doing the opposite thing of what my prior partners had done. And he's really drawing out that like childlikeness in me. And so
Mm.
it was an interesting paradigm shift for me because I was not expecting to end up with someone like him. But I feel like it has really been in my highest good in terms of like having more of like a whole and complete human experience. And then I think I introduce him more to the other side of things. So in that sense, we're a good yin and yang.
Mm. I love that for you so much. I love that. I'm so excited and happy for you. And also, I'm like, oh, yeah, that totally tracks like your dating history.
You're like, I know, I've met them.
Yeah, I saw them. I watched you with them. I think, it's funny. I'll stay with the like relational bit of this for a little bit too, because certainly my husband is way different than people I dated too. Like he is, I mean, I dated like NYU film students and like lawyers. Like that's who I dated. Like, so in their own ways, like really serious and intense. And I am a talker and I'm actually okay, this is like I feel like we could spend a lot of time on this. I actually think I'm quite introverted, which I did not understand until very recently. I think I'm like an extroverted introvert, and so I can talk and I can process things out loud. I'm a litigator for Christ's sake. Like I can go. And for me, like a hallmark of attraction had always been like, can we talk? Can we connect? Can we spar? Can we have that banter? Can we like exchange ideas? Like thinking about who I would be the most attracted to in the room would be like who I could have that kind of like magnetic conversation with. And I married someone totally different than that. And I remember, yeah, because Sam, and I was like, he just like was barefoot and burly and he's very physical. Like his intelligence is all physical. Like it's physical and it's heartfelt. But he understands the world and he processes his entire existence through his physicality. Maybe not his entire, but like it's just what he leads with. And I remember seeing him and his feet. I was like, this man has like the most expressive feet I have ever seen. And then I
Oh
was
my
just
God.
like
I'm
thinking
having
of,
flashback to Sam's feet walking by the yoga mats in class. And you're right. I remember the expressive feet.
It's wild. I know. I'm like, if everything fails, we'll just start like a foot OnlyFans or something. Like we can like, and we're just constantly barefoot. I mean, you can quote me on all of this. And like, and I remember being like thinking of like my lawyer's boyfriend's shoes and their feet in the shoes. I'm like, oh my God, it's so constricted. Like it was just such a like, and like the colors and the everything, like being so literally buttoned up. And then like Sam being just the opposite of that, like literally never has a shirt on, like still to this day, you know? And like if he does, it's like his shirt has like one button and like his chest hair is exploding out of it. And so I landed with someone who is very different from that. But also we've been together for like 13 years. So like it's been a long time of like that being who I've been relating with. So I think it maybe was a part of it.
To a T, have had like identical sort of experiences. And I think there, you know, my husband and I don't spar as much because I think he doesn't, he's more like wants things to be harmonious, and I think part of it is just also not like his, it's just not what he's drawn to in the way that like we're drawn to that kind of like that, because I've always been very verbal. I've always been very, and he's more of like a math mind, and he is social, and like we just have like some different colors in that sense. And I think there are moments where I'm like, oh, like, do I miss this, or is this something I'd want more of? But then, I think back, and one of the things about getting married older in life is that you have so much time to accumulate data points. Like I have so many, if I'm thinking about this from like a research perspective, my sample size is huge. That's that sounds a little creepy, but you know what I mean. Like I have a lot of data points as to like who I get along with, what the issues are, why it looks good in the beginning but doesn't look good in the end, and I think that I have realized that there are dynamics in not my current relationship, my forever relationship, that far outweigh the dopamine hit of like sparring over a glass of wine, which you and me both, so like, and there's tons of Esther Perel talks ad nauseum on like, why you shouldn't expect one person to fulfill all of your needs. And so I think for me, currently being in a research PhD program and like getting to selfishly indulge all of that like desire for, the intellectual sparring and conversations, like I get that in a different place. And then with him, we're able to find support and connection, I think, in a way that feels to me more meaningful and sustainable than even the people that I had the most like intellectual chemistry with.
Mm-hmm. It's good. Same. Like I also feel like going through many phases of my relationship and my marriage and my adulthood, like I think I find that connection point largely through my female friendships, and also like putting this on a podcast, right? It's like these are the conversations that also like really nourish me. And so it's cool to have just like a completely separate outlet that I don't need to share with my husband. It's good. I think it's good. I think it's good for everyone. But coming back to like the Benjamin Button thing, I feel, because so much of it is actually just me. It's actually just me continuing to feel more free in who I am, which comes through a lot of ways, like usually like having to go through some shit, like walking over the coals, like being placed in a position where I really have to like come to terms with something that I am grappling with about myself, and then like let it go or heal it or just, be okay without it. And that is a process of like just layer by layer peeling that back. And in a way, and I watch my kids who are now turning 5 and 9, and like I see like my older kid like getting more self-awareness, kind of losing that freedom. But I can see from them that like we come in so free and we all lose it in different ways at different points. But like, I think I spent a lot of my then like preteens, teens, and 20s into my late 20s really feeling like I needed to impress people with how demonstrate how valid I was or how important or smart or whatever. And the more I've been able to let that go, but I mean, Jess, I've been confronting this like even as recently as like my last corporate talk in the fall. Like it's funny when I put myself back in these situations, it's like my muscle memory kicks into being like, I must be impressive. And that feels old as shit to me. But when I can be with that freedom of like just who I am, that's timeless. It's young and it's ancient. And I think that's like the crone piece of it too. I don't know. It's ageless.
I love that. And I think we've probably danced around each other for all the years we have, because I think we share some similar wiring in some of those tendencies and predispositions that we have. And it's interesting because I recognize for sure that it's funny. I was thinking about this today. The character that I connected most with when I was a young girl was Sandy from Greece. And if you remember, she was like perfect and sweet and good, and and I think there's something there, like the characters that we kind of like associate with or connect with or resonate with at any point in time do mirror something back to us about something happening within ourselves. I can recognize that there were, for a multitude of reasons, I drifted from my unique essence into more of like a performative, perfectionistic version of myself. However, I also recognize that when I reconnect with like the essence that is me and the very, very earliest childhood memories I have, that that old, I kind of hate the term old soul, but like that old soulness and that seriousness and that like desire to know things and to be good at it, like that existed truly in me, So, and I think both can be true at once. That can be a part of you and a part of your authentic essence and true self, and that can also be exacerbated and exploited by your environment or your parenting or your schooling or your friends or what have you. So I think both can be a bit true at once.
That's good. Okay, we're totally behind on our questions, but we're not behind because who the fuck cares? Okay, but I'm going to consolidate some of these. Like, what were you supposed to have done by now? Or maybe these, I see these as like two sides of the same coin. Like, what did you think about a woman 35 turning 36? Like, what narrative or script or story were you given about a woman the age you are now when you were a kid or younger in your 20s?
That's a great question. I mean, I think in some ways I thought I would have more done by now, but that illusion has also broken for me a bit in my 30s. So um I had a really confronting thing happen that really kicked me off my path and put me on another path in a way that made me feel like I was really falling behind. But actually, from the perspective of where I am now, made me realize that I was being tossed off the ship so that I could actually float to the shore that was like right next to me, and I didn't realize was right next to me. So, like, long, painful story, very, very short. I had, I had a series of, and I know you'll understand this, like a series of what I felt to be very impressive jobs that signaled my intelligence and my success. So, I was working in startups and venture capital. I was the head of innovation for the American Psychological Association for 5 years. And then I was recruited to take on this other big role, which I won't mention the company, but basically, uh, due to, let me see how I want to say this. Due to some very toxic engendered dynamics in the company, And despite being a top performer in the company, I was let go in a way that, let's just say, lawyers advised me that I should have sued because I would have become a very rich woman, and I chose not to. Um, and that devastated me. And I really internalized that, and I just didn't know what to do. Like, I was so, because it just triggered every soft spot I had, it poked it. And for whatever the reason, despite being someone who could always sort of attract opportunities, it was like the faucet was off. And I was trying this, and then the door would close, and I was trying that, and then the window would slam shut, and I was trying this, and I would get past the threshold, and then I would get booted back out. And it was like I was trying, and like it was as if all of my sort of like magic was gone, and suddenly the universe had sort of turned itself off to me. And so I spent like the better half of a year working on a book, and that was like my job. And my husband and I agreed that that was something that like I was going to treat like a job, and I was going to sit down every day and work on it like a job. And that book ended up becoming essentially like the thesis for the PhD that I'm now doing. And so I'm currently in a PhD program studying the thing that I love the most. I'm so unbelievably like fulfilled and satisfied and joyous. And I never would have had the courage to like back away from the track that I was on, nor taken the time to really cultivate and develop my own understanding of like what I really wanted to study, if not for those series of events. And it took a long time. Like that whole process took a couple of years to unfold. And now it feels like every door is open again, and everything that was once accessible to me is accessible once again. So that's a long way of saying like it doesn't always look like you think it's going to look, and a lot of times it looks like you're falling tremendously behind because you don't realize you're actually being redirected in a way that's much more fulfilling. And so I think the lesson really is, it's so trite but true, like just trusting the process, and like trusting that like if there's something that is repeatedly not happening or is repeatedly wanting to happen, like you got to listen to it. And the more you fight it, the more you're going to find yourself on these detours.
I am curious if when you were going through that, if you were like, wait, what the fuck? Things always work out for me. Or like, I don't understand why this is not working, why I'm getting like, was that, yeah, okay, say more.
Because it was also around the time that I had just moved to New York. So not only did I no longer have this job and everything that had started was stuck, but I had just moved to New York after living in DC for 12 years. And so like I kind of felt like I had distanced myself from that network and those connections. And as you know, like so many of the opportunities that come to us are through connections, or people being like, I thought of you for this thing. And that's how the opportunity comes through, or someone referring us or endorsing us or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I was just like, oh, I've just lost my groove. Like I must be like, I mean, just the thoughts that went through my mind, I'm like, I'm cursed. I'm on my like downward spiral. Like I'm just not, and I just didn't, it was so, when you're used to things working out, when all of a sudden things just the faucet turns off, it is maddening. And you can't really, of course, the first temptation is to be like, what's wrong with me, or to blame yourself. And, you know, I don't want to insist that it was this like universal orchestration, but in hindsight, it kind of, that's just sort of how it feels.
Yeah, I feel like these are actually the thresholds that we have to walk through. Like you don't get like a clear, clean, all the lights are always green path forward. And to me, this is something that I'm starting to really see and anticipate at 40, almost 41, in a way that I just was completely clueless to at an earlier point. Um, and so I guess that is feels like a I'm just not surprised. Like, of course and it's Pema Chodron, right? It's like, of course things fall apart. And not to diminish your specific suffering and the pain and the bewilderment, but to me, I'm like, every time I've been fucking bewildered, that's always been a seriously, it's always been a critical turning point.
Yeah. But again, sometimes we're like willing to tolerate and be in awe of the bewilderment if it's like a week of bewilderment. But when weeks turn to months and then months turn into a few years, you're like, oh, this isn't bewilderment. This is something has gone really awry. And it really served as a reminder that even though my bewildered phase lasted way longer than I would have preferred it, that it really was, it's just actually, it's really unbelievable. My husband and I agreed that I was going to immerse myself in a body of research for a year before getting this tailor-made PhD opportunity to study the exact thing that I had been immersing myself in. And now that I've started it, I'm able to like get way ahead on the research, like publish things quickly. And just like have it be so perfectly tailored to the thing that I not only want to do, but feel I am meant to do. And so it's just, yeah, one of those things.
I love that. I love that for you. I love that for you. Okay, so I want to ask, sometimes I ask this as like, what's your current growing edge? But I'm going to give you the official under 40 prompt, which is if you are not yet 40, what's an open question you're living? What longing, desire, fear, or dream do you want to put out into the universe? Is there an open question that you're living right now?
So many. No, so my work and the thrust of the research that I'm doing now is on the psychology of human creativity. So helping to understand what makes creativity a uniquely human endeavor and what makes certain creative expressions feel more human, imbued with more humanity, imbued with the essence of an individual more than others. And so essentially the work is on authentic creativity and conceptualizing that and defining that and measuring that and understanding what that means, especially in a world with social media and algorithms and now artificial intelligence. And so I feel like the thing that I am trying to call in and to put out there is to really try. There's a lot of, let me back up. So AI triggers us to the extent that it does because it threatens our ontological security. It threatens what we believe to be our unique position in the universe and our unique role as humans. And this is because most humans have something called anthropocentric creativity beliefs. We believe that creativity is a uniquely human endeavor and skill and characteristic. And AI, unlike the calculator replacing the abacus or the horse replacing the car, AI is very different and unprecedented in that it triggers these existential feelings of our security as humans because we always thought our last remaining inimitable quality is our creativity. And AI, whether we call it creativity or not, technically speaking, definitionally speaking, it meets the criteria for creativity, that which is novel and that which is effective. Because it is so threatening to these existential questions, there is a lot of emotion and I think a lot of irrationality in terms of how people are relating to AI, speaking about AI, and moving forward. And so I would really like, through my research and through my work and to try to offer a balanced middle way of offering what makes creativity human, how we can still relate to creativity in a human way, while also acknowledging the reality that whether we like it or not, the AI train has left the station. It is here to stay, and saying, fuck it, or I'm not going to use it, or I don't care about, like, that's just not, it's not really an option, to be frank. Like, I mean, maybe it is if you want to go be a guru on a mountaintop, but like, that's not really a realistic way of relating to it if you want to be of the world and you want to compete with a world that uses AI. As the CEO of NVIDIA said, AI is not going to replace humans, but humans who use AI will replace humans who don't use AI. So take this with a grain of salt or through your own perspective, but I would really like to offer a more rational, more grounded, more scientifically based perspective of how people can understand and process this moving forward, because our world is going to change extremely quickly, and I think there's a need for some less polarized perspectives on it, because everyone's very heated and it's preventing both sides from making informed and existentially and humanistically healthy decisions.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that your open question that you're living is really tied to your work in the world in this moment in your life?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
completely. I mean,
Yeah.
that's also my just sort of always the way I
That's
operate.
you.
That's me. Yeah. That's the way I'm wired, girl.
That's you.
Yeah.
That's you. That's good. Okay. Rather than asking you another 40 portal question or like piece of wisdom, I think you just made your contribution to the book, and that's your question that you're living. So I'm going to ask you one final question, which is, how do you feel about turning 40? Have you thought of it?
I do. It's funny, and maybe I should.
She's like, no, not yet.
I'm like, oh, should I not say this on the 40 Portal podcast? But I do feel like, we all kind of have that like age in our mind where we're like, at what point do I feel like I'm starting to get old? And like, that's always kind of been 40 for me. So it is loaded in that sense. And of course, old is a relative term. But I guess what I mean by old is like no longer young. Like, I still, when I'm like out and about, it's still like, here you go, young lady. Like, here, it's like there's still that. And I feel like something changes around 40 where the young lady label no longer applies. So, but I'm excited.
Oh yeah, I'm ma'am. I'm ma'am.
I've graduated. I've graduated. And it's funny because like, even just, if I'm being totally honest, even just looking at myself in the cameras we're recording this, I'm like, oh, my eyes didn't used to do that, or like that thing didn't used to happen. So, but I also like, I'm excited. I was always meant to be an older person, and I think, oh my gosh, I was watching like an Instagram reel with Amanda Peet, the actress, and she's being interviewed, and she has this like kind of wild hair, and she has this like face with all these beautiful like wrinkles and laugh lines, and she's talking about facelifts and Botox, and how it's something that she's considered if she should do, and I'm just like, oh my, like, I see her and people like her who look natural, like, is so unbelievably beautiful and artistic, and like, it's just such a patina. Like, why would you take the patina off of the kitchen sink when that makes the kitchen sink so much more beautiful? So I don't know, I'm kind of like excited about the whole thing, but I also do uh, I think there are a couple of things that start happening in your mid to late 30s where you're like, oh, this didn't used to feel like this, or this didn't used to look like this. And that is a little bit of an acclimation process.
I will close the conversation by coming back to an earlier point, which is I felt what I call the 40 portal open for me right after our mutual friend Justin turned 40, and I was about to turn 39 that summer. And I was talking to him and I was like, well, how do you feel about 40? And he's like, oh, I feel great. I feel like a newborn. I feel like I'm brand new. Like at 39, you're 9, like you're like at the end of a decade. And he's like, and now I'm a baby. I can't wait to start over. And that conversation, Jess, was literally what got me just so attuned to what this process of transformation and transmutation is, I think, that happens as you approach this age and move into this decade. So whenever you feel the 40 portal open for you, if you do, will you come back on and talk about it?
Yes, I would love
Good,
to.
good. Okay, amazing. One of the most interesting things about the 40 portal so far is the fact that it keeps proving out again and again and again that women are not a monolith, that we are often not what we appear to be or not what society has pegged us to be or told us that we should be. One of the coolest things coming out of the most recent conversations in the podcast, including this episode with Jess, including last episode with Leah, even going back to Alicia's episode a couple episodes ago, is women commenting on AI, women shaping the cultural conversation around AI, namely women in midlife. And there's such a richness to our perspective. And so I could talk to Jess about this forever and ever. And I'm just so amazed at like who we actually are when we show up to share things in our own voices and believe that we have the validity to offer not only our hot take, but like our very well researched positions on things, including something like AI, which tends to track, let's face it, more masculine. Okay, so let's keep having interesting conversations like this one and go to so many more places. I need you to tell me where you want to go next. What are the topics that you are talking about in your real life conversations with your friends? 2 ways that you can share that. Number 1 is to make sure that you're subscribing to the podcast. Leave a 5-star rating and a review telling us exactly what you want to talk about here. What are the hot topics that you and your girlfriends are having hot takes on? While you're at it, why don't you share this episode with 1 or 10 of those girlfriends that you're talking to in real life? And the second way that you can contribute your voice is to literally put your question or your wisdom into the 40 Portal book. Head to the40portal.com/contribute to add your words to the conversation for the chance for your entry to be featured in an upcoming conversation. I love that we're doing this call and response with each other, for each other, to each other. And the more voices that get added, including yours, the richer, more textured, and more nuanced and more powerful these conversations become. Okay, I'm here for it. I hope you are too. I know you are too. That's the 40 Portal, babe. I'll see you right back here next week.